Hey, everybody. Welcome to a new edition of House Calls, the podcast. Tonight, Dr. Giggles and I are talking to our old friend and first repeat guest, Hearon Dickson. The internet's all buzz about him making a hole-in-one last week, so we want to hear all about that and a new venture that he's starting that all about his wellness and how he's going to be bringing that into an office near you. But Ty, I think Hearon's a great repeat guest for a lot of different reasons.
I agree. I'm excited to hear about his new venture. I think it's going to be fun. I got a lot of questions about it, how it works. And I think really the goal tonight is, since this is our first repeat guest, see if we can go without you cutting me off constantly.
What? I'm sorry, what?
That would be a good goal.
We're coming off the 4th of July weekend, and we spent a lot of time together. And just so you know, he does it in person as well, not just here. So, he's authentic throughout, which I always loved about him and appreciate.
In the immortal words of Popeye, I am what I am. So instead of us chattering, how about here's Hearon?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to House Calls, the podcast. Today, we are talking to our first repeat guest, Mr. Hearon Dickson. You'll recall Hearon from episode 11. And back then, I think was that 2024? Early 2025. I don't know. There's been so many in between. But since we've last spoke to Hearon, he has now reached elite golf status with making a hole-in-one recently, which I don't want to say anything, but it's muchly attributed to us and his breathing. And Ty,
no doubt.
And Ty has not made any advancements on his golf at all. If anything, he's regressed. And
how's he doing with his breathing?
He's a great breathing. Is going great.
Great breather.
Matt is lying to you. I played with Matt and Dr. Klepper, and I thought I played great that day.
There you go.
He hasn't just seen how bad I was before that.
That's true. That's
fair, believable.
Yeah. So, but Hearon, what's going on? First, let's talk about the hole-in-one. It was 280 yards into the wind, and you striped a 7-iron. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
133 yards into a slight breeze, because I knew I would get questions like this. So I did pull up the weather app, into a slight 8-mile-an-hour breeze, 8-iron. The funniest thing, or the most interesting thing about the hole-in-one, other than having achieved it, was that we were hitting into the sun, and that particular hole goes over some water with some pretty tall kind of pond grass in it. So you can't see the hill in the front of the green,
right? And
you can't see the first several feet of the green. So I didn't see it go in.
Oh my.
I knew I hit it well. I said to my playing partners, I said, "Did that make it over the pond?" And they're like, "Yeah, you hit it pretty well. I think you made it." Get up to the green, no ball. So a lot of people have teased me because the photograph I have, I'm holding a putter and a pitching wedge in the photo.
No comment.
But like anybody who's efficient, I took my wedge and my putter from the cart over to the green in case I was 20 yards short or 20 yards long. And there was my ball.
That's awesome. That's
pretty
so
cool.
Great.
Were you playing great that day, or was it just a regular day?
I played very well that day, actually.
Okay.
So I shot an 80, which is a good round for me.
Absolutely. Okay. That's awesome.
I'm a 14 handicap. So.
And the great thing is no one saw it because Hearon plays in the senior league, and that's the reason no one saw it. But anyhow,
the best part about playing in the senior league, which is true, I'm playing in the senior league over at Eisenhower nearby, as you all know, and we tee off at 7:00 in the morning, and when the round is over, these guys go home. So there was no danger of a bar tab or nothing. I mean,
good for you.
So is this going to interfere with your big announcement today? Like, are you going to go to the senior tour, or did you have some bad holes after that? And you're like, no, I can stick with my big announcement.
I think we're good with the big announcement. The big announcement is not that I'm going to the senior tour.
Okay.
So yeah, let's talk about it. Let's hear about Hearon Dickson wellness.
All right. Well, thank you. And I appreciate you guys reaching out to me and love what you guys are doing. So thanks for having me again. Honored to be the first repeat guest. Um, I've been teaching yoga, as we talked in the last episode. I've been teaching yoga for 5 years. I've been teaching meditation for 3 years. And I've always been sort of wondering or looking for the next thing. Where's this leading? It ties in directly with the sort of 3 times a week I post a 1 minute or minute and a half little short meditation on social media. That has been honestly kind of aimless, right? I get a lot out of it. I certainly appreciate the comments I get about it, but I've always been wondering what the next thing is. A couple months ago, I went to a 40th college reunion. I went to Wake Forest, threw out there the classmates to host a yoga class, and I rented a conference room at a hotel down in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Had about 20, 25 people show up at this yoga class, most of whom who had never done yoga before. And light bulb went off in my head in terms of this being something to offer to bring out, not to be corny, bring out into the world. And offer this to people primarily, I think, later in their careers, right? People who've got a little bit of maturity, need to move their bodies. So simultaneous to that, the guy that I've worked for in my professional job follows me on social media, says, you ought to put some of these videos on LinkedIn. Now, my average viewership on an Instagram post meditation is like 20. And so I took a deep breath and no pun intended, took a deep breath and posted one of these things on LinkedIn. I had 3,500 reactions to it.
Hey now.
The next step in this is taking this different places, talking to businesses, talking to organizations. There's a lot of workplace stress, a lot of stress all around us right now, right? So, what are some ways that I can bring some mindfulness, ultimately, whether that's yoga, whether that's breathing exercises, whether that's meditation, whether that's tips for handling stressful situations, but bringing that into organizations.
So how does that work with LinkedIn? Did they got so many views because people shared it, or somebody you knew who has followed you has a big LinkedIn account? I'm not on LinkedIn, so I don't know.
Okay, well, so I am on LinkedIn, obviously. I've got thousands of connections. I'm not active on LinkedIn, or I'm not otherwise active on LinkedIn, but people that I have known and interacted with over a 40-year career, it resonated with them. So that's part of it, right? It resonating with people I've known for a long time. And yes, people sharing it. But it led me to believe that there's something there as it relates to organizational sort of mindfulness programs.
Right.
And how do you envision this as somebody reaches out to you and says, hey, we're in, I want to get you involved in my company or with my coworkers or with my board or my management team? How would that be? Would it be a retreat? Would it be you come to them? Would it be remote?
Yeah. So yeah, well, hey, it's like so many things that we do, you guys doing this podcast, right? Learn as we go. But my vision is that I get them in a conversation and then we talk about it, right? I get a sense for why are we having this conversation? What are they seeing in their organization that makes this interesting to them? I envision that I'm going to take a pretty light approach. It's going to be like many things. You'll have 30% totally into it, 30% willing to give it a try, 30% what the heck are we doing this for, right?
Right.
Might be chair yoga.
Yeah.
Move our spine a little bit and um, learn some breathing exercises.
It's funny because Ty and I are both fans of the ice plunge. There will be more about that in an episode coming up, and it's about the breathing. Really,
Right.
it's about the breathing and showing that you can get through the hard stuff. And that's just a good lesson for everybody in every aspect of your
Right.
life. And it's what you're talking about is a great way to share that on a broader scale.
Yeah. Well, and thank you. And I think also, particularly right now, there's a way that we can make sure we're responding to one another better. So I think as it relates to an organization, I think there are some techniques tied in with all this mindfulness. You really pissed me off today, Matt. How do I take a deep breath and wait and
Right.
pause before I respond? And if I do that, I'm showing you some respect. Maybe you'll show me some respect back, and we can move forward.
It's an interesting concept from the breathing. We joked about, did you take a big breath before your hole in one? But I think we all realize that like elite athletes focus on their breathing like frequently.
Absolutely.
I'm sure a golfer, when they have a bad shot, they focus on their breath to get back in the moment. You see athletes do it all the time, but it's also something you would do before a big speech or before a big board meeting, or even just if there's somebody who's annoying, who's driving you crazy, being patient, taking a deep breath so you can be compassionate towards that person. It is true. Learning to breathe is incredible. And we all do it. I get it, but
Right.
It's true. It's learning how to control your breath or focus on your breath is something that I wish I would have been sat down when I was 14 and said, hey, let's practice breathing.
It's interesting when you talk about golf. I literally was just reading about this. A caddy, when their player is in a stressful situation, a good caddy will make the player slow down, walk at a leisurely pace, and start talking to them about something not even there. They're like, hey, take a breath. Let's get our pace back to our leisurely walk. We don't need to sprint to the ball to get there. And you're right, Ty. So I think athletes across all spectrums, use breathing, whether they know it or not, to get through tough situations.
I was for a while, and then I was too technologically deficient with my TV remote. But for a while, I was trying to record these different athletes because once you see it and you know what you're looking for, it is amazing. And you'll see a 19-year-old kid in the Final Four go up to the line, get the free throw line, get the ball, and pause and take that breath. And you know he's been coached, right? You
Right.
know that that's something that he's been coached on. And I love seeing that.
Yeah.
So that's what I did incidentally. So the first, or maybe one of the LinkedIn things I did, trying to put it into that business environment. And I said, hey, if you're a salesperson, I was in my car. I said, hey, if you're a salesperson and you're getting ready to go make a sales call and it's really big and a lot on the line, before you go in there, big inhale into the nose, brief hold, big exhale, calm you down. So a lot of analogies you can draw through that.
Sure.
I love the idea of, I know you said you saw it for being, I guess, middle-aged people or older people. I would love to see like a head of a company get it to the younger people, because I think we all, I'm sure you think this, I think it. I'm like, I do think sometimes I wish I would have known this when I was younger.
Sure. Well, I'm glad you came back to that because you're exactly right. Younger generation, that it doesn't need to be a defined age area, but there's a lot of pressure on these kids to perform, to take the next expected step, any number of things. There's a lot of pressure on them. So I think there's a lot that can be offered to them as well.
No doubt. No doubt. And if you have those tools in your toolbox early, you can
Right.
fall back on them later. So yeah, I
Exactly.
agree. I don't think there's any time, there's no wrong time to learn the importance of just the simple act of contemplative breathing.
Can you say a little bit more about meditation?
So there is a definition of meditation from the sort of ancient yogic texts, and that is a continuous flow of ideas upon a single sense object. That's a mouthful. So it is all of your attention on one thing, which by definition means the exclusion of all other things, right? So the most basic form of meditation is to focus on your breath. And if you sit, we'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, I'm sure, but if you sit for 2 minutes and try to focus on your breath, it's a lot harder than it sounds because our minds are racing, our minds are bombarded. But what you're trying to do there is have all of your attention on one thing. Again, in this case, in this example, your breath. And what that ultimately does is improve your attention, calm you down, reduce your blood pressure, reduce your stress. And over time, the goal is to make you more equanimity. So over time, the goal with meditation is that you've trained your mind to be more still, and you, as a result, are generally more calm. High is not quite as high, low is not quite as low. So
that's fascinating. Have you ever thought about this? For guys, the time that you get in that meditative state throughout your normal day is when you're peeing, because there's no phone, there's nothing else going on, and I swear to God, if you ever think you're like, well, I feel really good right now, and it's the same thing because you're focused only on one thing. There's no other distractions. Nobody unless Ty's next to you and he giggles and he's looking. But that's
I've never thought that. Maybe this is a little bit inside the mind of Matt Waldron.
Well,
like behind the scenes.
So what I would say to anybody who might be listening here would be, say, if you want to just, hey, I listened to this conversation, I want to try to meditate. What I would do is set a timer for 2 minutes and count your breaths. And the best way to do that is count to 10. When you get to 10, return to 1. Or if you exceed 10 and oh my God, I got to 12, don't worry about it, return to 1. And that's actually a specific type of meditation where you're using what's called a note.
Breathe in for 10 and then release for 10?
No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And if so not to get too much in the weeds here, if it's in, out, 1, you count to 5. So in, out, 1, in, out. That way you only count to 5. In, 1, out, 2, you count to 10. So it's the same thing.
Gotcha. Just
whatever resonates better. Start back at 1. Now here's what's interesting about what I was saying about improves your attention, all these distractions. If you can do that for 3 cycles, that's pretty advanced, and that's pretty hard. So think about that. It sounds so super easy. Oh, I can do that. I can count to 10 3 times without my mind wandering. It's a challenge.
And part of the idea is it's good for you to breathe like that, but also is that if you're counting your breaths, your mind cannot be worried about the speech or worried about your schedule that day. You can only focus on the breath. So
exactly.
That's why a lot of people say, I'm going to take 10 minutes in the morning just to focus on myself, to not do any of the other stuff. And breathing's a good way to do it. But a common misconception I hear is people say, well, I can't do that because I have too many thoughts. And another way to do meditation is just notice your thoughts, like your thoughts are in a stream. So right now, Matt's like, why is Ty talking so much? Oh, that's a thought. Why is Ty cutting me off? That's another thought. Why haven't I gotten a hole in one? That's another thought. I'm so embarrassed about the peeing focus in the flow joke. That's another thought. And you're just watching your thoughts.
That's exactly right.
And then you ultimately, I guess the Socrates quote is know yourself or know thyself. It's like as you're watching your thoughts, you know yourself better and you realize, hey, those are just thoughts going in my head. They're not necessarily reality. They're not the here and now. They're just my thoughts. And you notice how many of those thoughts aren't even real.
That is exactly right.
And the double trick there was now he can't edit out the peeing part because they'll be like, what's Todd talking about? I got to keep in the peeing part now.
Very smooth.
Yes.
Very smooth.
He's getting really good at this now.
Yeah.
I'm really upset by that. And I've had every one of those thoughts. And I've had 2 holes in one, by the way.
What? Who were you playing with for your first?
My first was Hearon Dickson.
Yeah.
At Eisenhower.
In fact.
Okay. And where was your second one?
Baltimore Country Club.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. Were you working on your breath for both of them?
I probably should have, because I'm pretty sure the next holes were not so great.
Okay. So Hearon, Matt and I were talking about something. So when life is rough, there's 2 ways to deal with it. There's the distraction method, and which is not always a bad thing. I mean, sometimes distraction could be like, I'm going to do my breath work, and that's going to distract me from this thing that is kind of making me anxious. Or for somebody, it could be to go do yoga, it could go run, it could go to play golf. And then there's also bad things that you could use to distract yourself, like overeating, over drinking, gambling too much, that kind of stuff. And ultimately, though, you can distract yourself a long time, but ultimately you want to somehow find peace with these issues. So Matt and I were talking about, because we try to be as apolitical as possible. So I've been really worried about the Orioles pitching. And I distracted myself from that because my son Roddy and I were watching a really good TV show. I never binge shows, and this one I was binging, and it was the cartoon Invincible. It's incredible. Go see it. But I wasn't worried about the Orioles pitching for 2 whole weeks. And I was basically using the distraction method, but ultimately I do have to come to peace with the Orioles pitching. So do you have any comments on the distraction method versus coming to peace with something?
Wow. So I thought you were going somewhere else when you said apolitical.
Maybe I need to go somewhere else.
And I'm glad you landed on the Orioles pitching.
No.
But and maybe I'm veering away from your question a little bit. But what's big for me right now is which of these distractions do we invite? Right? So in other words, Orioles pitching. You can watch the game, you can be frustrated with the pitching, and however you react is how you react, and then you go on. Or you can spend 2 hours on Twitter interacting with other fans about the Orioles pitching and listen to AM radio and listen to the talking people talking about the Orioles pitching, and you're inviting distraction, thereby disabling yourself from moving on to peace, right? So, I think we would all agree, and I think anybody watching this or listening to this would agree that coming to peace is more healthy than the distraction method, right? What distractions are we inviting? And that's something that's actually pretty big for me. You're in your doctor's office. What are the people doing in the waiting room?
They're generally on their phones.
One of the sort of short meditation techniques that I've been talking about some is, rather than scroll, you're sitting there for 10 minutes and your office is highly efficient. You're sitting there for only a couple minutes, I know, but you're sitting there for just a short period of time. Can you use that opportunity to do the counting method with your breath, or sit there with no external stimulation and watch those thoughts like you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Okay.
Matt, can I keep going? Or do you
I'm
want to jump
sorry, I
in
fell
here?
asleep. What? Yeah.
I
I got distracted. I was in a stream looking at my thoughts.
It can be balloons. Your thoughts can be balloons, and you can pop each one as they go by. So Matt, while I
like
talk
that.
to Hearon, start popping balloons.
Okay, you got it. You two. I'll let the grown-ups talk now.
I do like to think about, like, you have a certain stress level, and think of it like a bucket of water, and you can handle so much stress, and everybody's amount they can handle. Everybody's bucket is different sizes, but you should be mindful if what you're putting in that bucket. Some things you can't avoid. Like if you have a job, so say you're a surgeon, a resident surgeon, there are certain stresses that you can't avoid and that you just have to put up with it. But don't add to those stresses by having a hobby that's stressful or procrastinating, which could be stressful. Don't add to your stress beyond what you can handle. And that's part of mindfulness, is realizing yourself, oh, this is stressing me out, but this is really important to me, so I have to put up with it, versus this is stressing me out, but I don't actually play for the Orioles. I don't make any of my living off of the Orioles or whatever it is, and be like, okay, this one I can back off of. And there is a great book by Jocko Wilkes. Wilkes. He is a Navy SEAL, and he does a lot of corporate leadership stuff. And his thing is called Extreme Ownership. And his book is basically saying, take extreme ownership of everything. But my point is, if you're not taking extreme ownership of it, then it's not important enough to you. And maybe that should not be in your stress bucket. So
That's a great point.
I joke about the Orioles, but I don't work for the Orioles. I'm not making any money off the Orioles. If I was taking extreme ownership, I would be doing everything I possibly could to become a baseball scout and help the Oriole pitching get better, or learn how to coach pitching. But that's not what I do. So I need to drop it down a notch and enjoy it.
I knew finally you would add some
Yeah,
value.
I like that.
That was good. Good.
I like that.
Glad I didn't pop that one.
I wrote that
Did
down.
Ann write that down?
Yeah, it's a great book. I love that book. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it ties in with what we've been talking about. Absolutely. It ties in perfectly with what we've been talking about, which is, well, I don't need to recap everything you just said, but I think it ties in extremely well with what we were just talking about.
But there's a thing called Navy SEAL box breathing. And
yes.
I think it might be before, you have to steady yourself before you shoot, I guess, and before any big moment. And I like how the message gets to different people different ways. So if you're like, hey, this is what Kobe Bryant used to do. He used to do this breathing method. Then all the athletes might be like, oh, what did Kobe Bryant do? And the Navy SEAL might catch another group of people, and the yoga person gets another group of people.
That's right.
And I think having all the different ways people breathe, because when I first started hearing about breathing, I think it was the Wim Hof thing, because I thought it was amazing that he could climb Mount Everest in a t-shirt. And I think that's the first book I read, was something about his ice stuff. And then I read the next one, Matt, that you read, which was just called Breathe. Yeah. And I was a mouth breather. And I'm still a little bit of a mouth breather, but and it was because of allergies when I was young.
Right.
And, when you breathe through your nose, you're increasing your nitrous oxide, which relaxes all your vasculature. And it is far better. And it's far better to breathe through your nose. Plus you're filtering through your nose, and it's just a better way to breathe. And that book has changed Matt and my life. We used to
absolutely.
walk around like, Now, Hearon, you're a runner. Did you ever meditate when you were running?
So I'm going to say yes, because way before I even got into yoga and meditation and stuff, I stopped listening to stuff when I walk or run. You'll see me out around here, more walking now than running, but I don't have any audio stuff. For two reasons. One is to make me more aware of my surroundings. And I don't mean from a safety perspective. I mean from a sort of mindfulness, be in the moment, aware of my surroundings. Even if I were in Manhattan, awareness of my surroundings, I think is a healthier way for me to do it, to put it that way. But then it's a great opportunity, Ty, to practice exactly what you were talking, which was there's a thought, there's a thought, there's a thought, there's a thought. And you can cover a lot of ground in your brain while you're exercising if you're not bombarding yourself. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. It's just I'm choosing something different with other information, other data.
So they talk about a practiced meditator takes, you do it on your cushion or on your sofa,
Hmm.
and ultimately you get to the point where you just spontaneously do it through life. So they meditated just spontaneously. We came into work this morning, and the Hanover office had no air conditioning.
Ooh.
It was like 88 degrees in the office. And it's a satellite office. We don't have as many people there. And I sat down, kind of like, okay, how are we going to handle this? It's too hot for older patients and things like that. And as I'm sitting there thinking, taking shallow breaths, and I'm like, man, this is a sauna. I can barely breathe because it's also 88 degrees without any,
Right.
you can't open windows. There's
Right.
no crosshair or anything like
Yeah.
that. And I'm like, well, first of all, let's catch my breath. So as you do your deep breaths, you're like, it's fine. The problem will be if it's like this till 3:30 in the afternoon. That could be a
Right.
problem. But for right now, you're fine. So we came up with a plan. It was uncomfortable. Luckily, at noon, the AC came back on, so it was around 1 o'clock. The place was comfortable. But those first couple hours were pretty rough. But so
Yeah.
much of it was in your mind. And the biggest thing is that you're not used to sweating in that environment. So if I was out playing golf and I had that level of sweat, I'd be like, well, that's no big deal. But like you're in a situation where you're not used to sweating. But it was kind of like, it's not gonna be like this forever. It's one day, it's possibly half a day. And it ended up being fine. Now, Mary Kate, my daughter, who's only 24, she was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
That's what we've
Great.
been talking about with the breathing and the plunging and everything. It's like you can get through hard things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
uncomfortable things. And it's okay. It's okay to stay in the uncomfortable because this too shall pass.
But isn't there this is another thing I've been thinking about with the hard things, because we have interviewed some pretty high achievers, like Heron said, people who are putting themselves out there, people who keep going and do new things. And I love the whole do hard things, but there's also, this is part of mindfulness, is knowing when you need to rest. And that is okay to be useless at times. Like you don't have to be achieve. And even like there's seasons of your life, like maybe you launch something like this big project, it gets going, and then you're like, okay, now I'm taking a little sabbatical for a couple months to breathe and make sure I can really commit to my yoga and really commit to my mindfulness and meditation and things like that.
Well, so I have a strong opinion on that. There's a quote, and I can't remember who said it, so I can't attribute it properly, but it says, the happiest people I know are not speeding up, they are slowing down.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, my opinion on what you just said is I agree 100%. And I think that the slowing down enables you to, when you need to, speed up, be productive, do more, etc., with more efficiency and just higher quality. I'll draw an analogy to this thing that I just launched today. I've been in a pretty long period of time. I mean, I can't define it, but a pretty long period of time of what am I going to do next? What am I thinking? Where is this going? And continuing to throw stuff out there. But like I said earlier, no point to it, no aim to it, right? Just kind of doing it. And that's really not a lot of work. Then the light bulb went off to do this. And for the past 2 months, I mean, I've been going. Whether it's website, whether it's content, whether it's, whatever it is. And I was able to do that, but because I didn't do it until I was ready to do it, right? I was rested and ready. And when the time was right, I hit it, rather than for the past 5 years, just, the duck, what's the analogy about the duck with the legs underwater, right? Wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
Right. But so now, as you said, time is everything. So you're motivated, you're energized, and you want to do it. You're committed to it. You're owning it, and you want to make it a success. That's what keeps the fire going.
I'm owning it extremely.
There you go.
Yes, yeah.
There you go.
And you know who needs this is young surgeons.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
all surgeons need it, but young surgeons so they don't spend 40 years being over the top crazy.
Well, go to my website and book a discovery call. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. I have often joked. I joked with the anesthesiologist at my surgery center that when I retire, I want to be a therapist for surgeons because I've seen it all. I've heard it all. Before we go, I need a book recommendation before you go, Hearon. I'm done my books.
I just finished my favorite book of the year so far.
Ooh.
Finished it yesterday. It is called Still Life by Sarah Winman. I think it's Winman, W-I-N-M-A-N. I think that's right. And it's a novel. It takes place starting during World War II. It takes place in Florence, Italy, and in London. And there's no great insight to be gained from it other than human relationships. Awesome book.
Still Life. All right.
It's like 1942 or 3 up to like 1970.
That'll be perfect for me.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exciting stuff, but this is way past my bedtime now. But this is what you got going on is I love, again, I've said it before, your evolution to watching all this has been fascinating to have be up close and watching it. And I'm sure this next chapter is going to be equally rewarding for you and for all of us to watch, because literally I was out running this morning and I was like, thought about it. I was like, I got to talk to Hearon about meditation. And then I saw your announcement, and then I was like, oh, good. On Wednesday, I can start, following his 5-step guide to how to do this. So, perfect. Hearon, good insights as always. Good books, good stuff. You're the best.
We're going to have you again to find out. Once you've saved the world.
That should be the name of your podcast. Hearon Saves the World.
Yeah. I'll pinch hit anytime. So happy to do it.
And then we do need to get Matt meditating.
Yeah.
Help his golf game. He hadn't had a hole-in-one in years.
That's right. Definitely.
All right.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Yep. Thanks. Hey, everybody. Welcome to a new edition of House Calls, the podcast. Tonight, Dr. Giggles and I are talking to our old friend and first repeat guest, Hearon Dickson. The internet's all buzz about him making a hole-in-one last week, so we want to hear all about that, and a new venture that he's starting that all about his wellness and how he's going to be bringing that into an office near you. But Ty, I think it's Hearon's a great repeat guest for a lot of different reasons.
I agree. I'm excited to hear about his new venture. I think it's going to be fun. I got a lot of questions about it, how it works. And I think really the goal tonight is, since this is our first repeat guest, see if we can go without you cutting me off constantly.
What? I'm sorry, what?
That would be a good goal.
We're coming off the 4th of July weekend, and we spent a lot of time together. And just so you know, he does it in person as well, not just here. So, he's authentic throughout, which I always loved about him and appreciate.
In the immortal words of Popeye, I am what I am. So instead of us battering, how about here's Hearon?